You're between two dumbbells. I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including over 24 years of online coaching. I'm joined today, as usual, by Dr. Marv, aka the Educated Meathead, and thankfully, he's bringing his big brain to the project. For each show, we posit a thought about a training exercise or training methodology, and then we deep dive into the minutia. We argue and debate, might also pull hair, break a nail, kick off them flip-flops, yelling, "Oh, no, you didn't." But when the dust settles, we both decide if we would smash or pass. Of course, we'll also be doing another segment of Intimate Time with Skip and Dr. Marv, and then we'll finish, as always, with a few listener questions, which are typically, though not always, related to a past show. It's important to remember that every time you comment on the show on YouTube, you'll be included in a drawing at the end of each month to receive a Team Skip t-shirt of your choosing from the teamskip.com store, and you'll receive Dr. Marv's online bodybuilding anatomy course for free as well. Of course, your comment on YouTube needs to be more than just a generic for the algo to be considered for the monthly drawing. We'll post a winner for the month at the end of April on my Intense Muscle IG account. And we'll also reach out to the winner via their YouTube account. So far, how am I doing, Dr. Marv?
Not half bad. It's like you've been rehearsing.
We've done it a few times now. I'm getting a little bit better at it. My mom said if you do something long enough, eventually you'll get good at it. I'm going to hand the Posit off to you today. I'm going to be fair, and I'm going to let you give your opinion.
Wow, I'm getting spoiled. Good Lord. All right. You woke up on the right side of the bed.
Yeah. That's my wife's advice. Sometimes I have to take
it. All right. So today, I'm going to posit that when it comes to upper body training, you should really be focusing on your elbow path and your elbow positioning rather than your hands.
Oh, I like it. I see how I acted like I didn't know what you were going to posit.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. That was really good.
That was pretty, I don't know.
And the Oscar goes to.
Not terribly convincing, but whatever. I like this topic. I like this idea. It's something I preach a lot with my clients because I think it's just a really good cue to try to get the thought away from the hand or the weight or the pulley, anything you're holding on to, and change that focus. And I don't call it just the elbow. And I think this is a good reason that it stands out with my clients. It's a Wenis Wagina issue. And some people will know what that is and other people won't. Wagina, crack of the elbow, and Wenis, the point of the elbow.
All right.
Okay. And that will come into play depending on the exercise that we're talking about. Example could be machine flies. Instead of touching hands, can't have those vaginas this far apart. You can be touching your hands, but we want to touch those vaginas. So that's one example of why I think it's a even better cue to differentiate between the two. We on the same page so far?
Yeah.
Did you hear that Wenis Wagina reference before?
No.
You don't read my articles. Well, I'm going to make a note of that too. Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Marv.
Yeah.
Support. Okay, so how do we want to go about this? Do we want to just jump into exercise? What are your basically your main thoughts as far as elbow position versus hand or wrist position? And I think it's important to note that it's in relation to it's elbow position, but it's in relation to shoulder position and wrist position. So, there's that. It's nuanced.
Yeah, like I always tell people, like, especially with back training, just because that seems to be the hardest because we can't see it, is, like elbow down, that is merely a hook that you're holding onto the weight. Who cares what you're doing there? I mean, obviously, I want wrist straps or Versa grips on all working sets, but I digress. But really, it's focus on your elbow. The second you focus on your elbow, it's a lot easier to kind of simplify your thought process because it can be really daunting especially in the world of meathead biomechanics and bodybuilding anatomy that we know I love. It is information overload. So a lot of people just get a little freaked out and I go, hey, let's just simplify it. So elbow path. Okay. I know it as the olecranon. So this is the Wenis and that's the Wagina.
Right.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so like let's go back to the pec fly that you're talking about. I completely agree. So I always said picture pressing your elbows together, but I guess I will now use that technical term, right? Because that will help you recruit the pec.
Very technical too, I might add.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how I've never heard that. Interesting. And apparently I don't read all your articles. So anyways, yeah. So like, why don't we stick with I think I changed my mind. Let's stick with back first, then we could go to shoulders and we could go to chest, right?
Sure.
So let's simplify back training overall. If you want to be prioritizing lats, you want your elbow by your side, right? So you're picturing pulling your elbow down to your hip whenever you want to prioritize your lat. So that means elbow in. If you want to be really technical, the active range. So the active range is the range of motion that the target muscle has its mechanical advantage, is about 120 degrees of shoulder flexion to about hand by your side, elbow by your side. If I go past that, a different muscle called your teres major will take over, and you go above it, the teres major will take over. So if you want to be really technical, if you want to prioritize lats, you're pulling your elbow down to your hip and you're staying from about 120 degrees of flexion to elbow against your midline. That's how I simplify lat training. Now, 20% of folks' lats don't attach to their shoulder blade. So shoulder blade motion isn't of the utmost importance to lat training, unlike your upper back.
Okay, I got to touch on this. I got to stop you.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in the 20%, how do I know that?
We don't.
Okay.
Yep.
Clearly, it's going to impact could impact our back training if we knew that we had that attachment versus not. Correct?
Yes and no, because I go, unless you're going to be doing like a functional MRI, I don't really think it changes much anyways. It's more of a fun factoid, but shoulder blade movement is not as important for your lat as your upper back. And before we go to the upper back, technically, if you want to fully lengthen your lat, you actually want a slight rounding of your low back. And yes, technically, if you want to fully shorten your lat, not only would you be rounded, you would be slightly side bending that way.
And that's contradictory to advice that we have received from the muscle magazines. Oh, who wrote for the muscle magazines? I was one of those guys.
Yep.
I'm in line with a lot of other Ron Harris and all those other guys.
Yep.
Okay, so which I think is a great point. I got a couple things that I do not want to forget that I want to touch on with this because I think it's important. Okay, I like the cue of the elbows, along the side. I actually, when you're doing that, I'm thinking, ooh, that he kind of looks like he's doing a reverse grip pullover. Like okay, now here is a cue that I picked up from Sam Brown from Elite FTS when he was with Elite FTS.
Yeah, smart kid.
Exactly, and I love it. So when it's up, and I'm going to explain it, up in the top position of a lat pull or a lat pull machine, and what I'm doing is I'm exaggerating the inward rotate. Now I'm doing it dramatically, so I don't expect anybody to take this cue and do the set exactly this way. But I'm doing it dramatically at the start of every rep to make the point, to kind of be a cue, a visual cue that the elbow needs to internal rotation, correct? Or is that too high to be internal?
Let me see again. I can't see your shoulder. I'm sorry.
It's coming in.
I still can't see.
Yeah. We're
so
wide
if you're
when
here,
we record.
If you're rotating in, that is internal rotation.
Okay, let me do it again. Right? If we start here, we come in.
You going palm up or palm down?
I'm turning the elbow in towards my face.
So that's externally rotating.
Okay, in the stretch position, in the lat pull. Okay, I just want to make sure we're right. Okay, so, and what that is it's a reminder at the beginning of every rep from the stretch position to rotate the elbows essentially inward to the midline prior to pulling. And if you haven't tried it, you can do it with a regular straight bar as well. Try it and tell me you don't feel the difference. And before I forget, this is one of those things that I wanted to ask you, and I don't want to forget this. I don't think it's by accident that I have narrow clavicles. My scapula don't want to open very wide, but I have excellent lat development. versus that wide opening, big scapular range during a lat spread. And when I think about me and my lat development, I'm like, oh, I know other guys with narrow clavicles and their lats are better than their middle back. Makes sense if there's not that range of motion with the scapula, as you said, not being able to target the lats as well, or not being able to target the mid back as well, but targeting the lats instead, or lats better. I shouldn't try to paraphrase what you just said, but basically, I'm not surprised, is what I'm saying, that my lat development is better with the more narrow clavicles. Connection?
Yeah, because it's a lot easier to get a stretch, right? We know muscles grow better from the stretch position. It's a hell of a lot easier to get a stretch, right? Because you could be close versus wider. That's going to be a lot harder. And typically, what do we find? People either have a naturally dominant upper back or a naturally dominant lats. Like you could see how people, when they're just with how they're training, how they're biomechanically set up, their anthropometrics, all that stuff we've talked about. When we start training, your brain finds these neural pathways. And so for your brain or people with narrow clavicles, I completely agree. It seems like it's the brain likes using the lats versus the upper back. Wide clavicles usually seems to be the opposite. Not always, but usually.
Okay, now can we say, and maybe we can't because it's a blanket statement, can we say that wide lat pulls or wide grip chins, kind of like Arnold era chins that Arnold used to do, can be thrown in the trash for the vast majority of people? Or am I making too much of a blanket statement?
I consider those an upper back pull up or pull down. So there was one study where the lat. So remember I said lats are by your side, right? Upper back is elbow out, which we're going to go to next. Well, a study was doing lat pull downs. And once the upper arm got below 90, then the lat really kicked in. But up top is a lot of upper back. So trap, teres, rhomboid, that stuff, right? And how do most people do their chins when they're going super wide? They're only coming to here. Sure. They're not going all the way down. So once again, it's an upper back movement. So yeah, when I write programming for clients or course for like programs that I do, I will have, is it an upper back focus lat pull down, which we're going to talk about in a sec, or is it a lat focus pull down? And if that's the case, I want elbows in, neutral grip, rounded low back, blah, blah, blah.
Very good point, because I think a lot of people make the mistake of using the term back training or back exercises with lat training or lat exercise. They use those two terms kind of, well, they conflate the terms, basically. They don't separate them, and they need to be separated, and they need to be specific because of the complexity of the musculature of the back. It's just a way oversimplification and absolutely incorrect to consider wide grip chins as an example, a lat move.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Completely agree. Yeah, because I'll go, because we've talked about it, back width versus back thickness. My brain more goes to, is it lat focused or is it upper back focused? That classification works better for me. To each their own. I'm not saying mine is the right way, but that's how I approach back training. Am I trying to get upper back or am I trying to get lat?
Agreed. So take me down the path then. Where are you going with the upper body, or I'm sorry, the upper back?
Yep.
Elbow position.
Lat is by your side, and technically a slight low rounding of your low back will help get a bigger stretch on the lat, which is probably a good idea. Upper back is going to be elbow out by your side, preferably elbow even behind you, because guess what? Now we want to prioritize shoulder blade protraction and retraction. That is massively important. So I want my elbows at least 45 degrees, maybe a little bit higher. And I'm trying to get my elbow behind me, and I am trying to squeeze and get as much possible movement of my shoulder blade as possible while maintaining a very upright sternum, and a slight arch in my low back will help prioritize the upper back.
Okay, so I've got a question for you. When you see someone doing absurdly heavy T-bars or barbell rows, to the point where the range of motion is limited, where they're not pulling maybe they're pulling 75% of the range of motion and that retraction isn't there. Where do you rank that as far as, on the one hand, it's heavier, so it's a stimulus that the back has not seen, versus the fact that it's not a full range of motion? I have my opinions, but I want to ask you yours first.
Yeah, so that's somebody using a shotgun, not a sniper rifle.
Sure.
But then you're getting erector development, which is great. So I can make a case for both. So then I go, are you somebody who's like Branch Warren, where you could do stuff like that? Or are you a mere mortal to where you're probably not getting every ounce out of your back training because you're going way too heavy, trying to 8-plate row it? Heaven forbid you use the close grip handle that Ronnie used, right? Where there's no range of motion. You're essentially doing biceps in a very ballistic, dangerous method. I think, this is an example of our egos get in the way. I mean, I'm even guilty of this, right? Like, I tweaked my back pretty badly last week, so I had to do a modified workout. I only did 2.5 plates on the chest supported row, not my 3.5. And I was like, I definitely got a little bit more retraction today. Hey, you dumbass. Like,
but we need to see where that ceiling is sometimes too, to be able to get there and go, okay, it's just a little too far. Now I need to back off. Unfortunately, you found out where that ceiling was based on the fact that you injured yourself. But most of us typically, and you included, you'll get to the point where you're like, yeah, I don't feel that. That feel is not there. I can tell that I'm losing that range of motion and I'm not able to get that retraction. And I don't even know if it needs to be 100% retraction, because then you have to lighten up, so much that you have to wonder or argue, where is that balance? And I think there is a balance in there. And it's very, very gray. It's certainly not black and white. So how much of that retraction do I give up to be able to still maintain the stimulus with a weight that I feel is heavy enough to be able to? And that is an individual question that, quite frankly, I can't answer. I don't think you can either.
So what I do now is I'll have folks do their top working set is heavy. Maybe it's slightly too heavy. And then their back off, they lower it. And then I go, hey, now I want massive protraction, retraction. But for the first set, do your progressive overload. Pretend like you're doing DC training where you have to beat the logbook or you have to walk home. Then do your successive sets where it's, mind muscle connection, getting the squeeze, getting that range of motion. So I think that's a way to, one, also have fun with your training. Because if you're somebody who likes throwing away, what did Dante call it? Heavy slag iron, right? Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah. Like, if that's what you like, great. If, oh man, I need to take a plate off the chest supported row. Sounds like nails on a chalkboard. Well, do your normal heavy shit. And then for your back off, take that plate off and then really get as big of range of motion and the biggest contraction and stretch as possible. So that's how I would answer that now.
Fair enough. I do exactly the opposite. I do. And again, it's not necessarily right or wrong, but here's why I do that. I like to go with the tighter set for slightly higher reps.
Okay.
And when I say tighter, I mean like a better range of motion. I'm going to be, and I'm 55, I've been training for 41 years, so there's that difference too. I feel like there are vulnerabilities that the 25, 30, 35, arguably the 40-year-old may not even have yet, or is kind of putting their toe up to the line. So what it does for me is I'm warmer when I get to my heavier set, challenging set, if you will, where I'm taking a little bit more of a risk. And if I lose that little bit of range of motion, let's say you lose a lot, like I get in there and I go, okay, I'm at 7 reps and I'm not a 7-rep guy. If I'm in the 7-rep range, I'm like, yeah, this is too low. To me, it's kind of like a 3-rep set. It's just too low. So if I do get caught and I can't get enough reps at that weight, that's when I will make the decision to take 20 seconds or so, drop the weight a little bit, and add another 4, 5, 6 reps. It might be a rest pause, but it's likely going to be a drop set. I'm going to come down, a little bit in weight, and then I'm going to get 4, 5, 6 more reps that are going to be better range of motion to kind of extend that set. But it doesn't happen very often. I've been doing this for a while, so I have a good idea of how much I can go up on that second set and, how many reps roughly that I'm going to get up. But every now and then I'll challenge myself and I come up a little bit short. But that's how I approach it. So there's two options right there, complete opposite, choices, for the viewers as
Now,
well.
so my question is, like, for me, if I still, if my body allows, I still like pushing for that rep where I'm probably not going to get it, but just mentally I like going for it. I'll make a note, like, 8 solid reps. The last 2 didn't count. Like, I'll write that in my logbook of, 8 reps, great range of motion, last 2 reps, not as great a range of motion. So I won't count those, but I'll still make a note that I made an effort to finish the rep, so then I could try and maybe do 9 reps in one not full range of motion the next time. So I'll notate that. I'm assuming you're doing the same.
Yeah, and I'm not a big logbook guy the last 4 or 5 years. Oddly, in my older age, I can't remember much of anything. I can't remember what I ate probably an hour ago, but I can remember the numbers that I did on a specific exercise.
Interesting.
7 days ago. Yeah, it's kind of an odd.
So do you have one rotation of workouts?
No, I only have I have 2 that are not completely 100% like copy, but it's very close. I have two sequences that I typically stay with 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks at a time. It just depends. And I'll switch little things out. So it's easier for me to remember because I don't currently have the variety that I have forced for years prior. I used to force a lot of variety. I would rarely do the same exercises for like I wouldn't come back to an exercise for maybe 3 weeks. I used to really, really push right, especially when it's a multi-angle joint. Biceps, I couldn't care much about. Calves, yeah, it's going to be the same thing. Abs, going to a lot of the same stuff. When it comes to back and shoulders and chest, I usually will. And for legs, I'll rotate those out. Leg injuries, that's kept me pretty consistent with my exercises because I know what I like and what works. So let me add one thing on back before we move on, and that is this. I have felt for years that for lat development, the either chin or pull down at shoulder width or slightly inside is a very easy way for the average person to force their elbows in and get lat recruit.
Mm-hmm.
If in doubt and you don't know exactly what the one arm kneeling, position at, this 90 degree or 80 degree or 72 degrees, if you don't know what that is, cut out all the crap and stay with a lat pull or a chin, an assisted chin if you need to, where the elbows and the wrists or the hands are at or inside, slightly inside shoulder width. And I think that it would be incredibly difficult to not involve the lats relatively efficiently and relatively optimally.
Yeah, because the closer my elbow is, the better. One thing we need to talk about for upper back with elbow position is an important muscle that I think we've talked about it, but I still would like to show this. Give me one sec.
While you're pulling that up, I'm just going to add that if you're feeling a lot of brachialis on those narrow lat pulls or chins, you're fighting the natural mechanics of that movement. And that goes back to not pulling from the elbow, but pulling from the hand.
Yep. And if as soon as you do elbow down, you'll take a lot of arm work out of it and a lot of trap work. So for people, this is your lat. Okay. When we talk about upper back, we're specifically talking about this guy, your teres major, your rhomboids, and your traps, especially your middle traps. Okay. Now, an important muscle I do want to highlight is this lower trap. I think we talked about it in the shoulder health conversation, but this is a really, really, really important muscle. So it is the lower part V of your trap. So everybody could see that. And then let me show the front of the shoulder blade and why this matters. And then I'll quit sharing my screen. So just look at the front of the shoulder. There should be a recall in my mind, right? Where they've got this guy's the number 1 torn rotator cuff muscle. Here's your bicep tendon. That's super common weightlifters to aggravate. It's because we have these hooks here. And then one more time. Oops, sorry. Let me bring back the trap. Look where the lower trap attaches, which is right about there. So I say all that to say, it is really important, at least with warming up or rehabbing or whatever, is we want to get that lower trap to fire. Now, how to do that? Your arm needs to be parallel with the fibers, which is elbows going way overhead. Why that matters is it takes those damn shoulder blade hooks, right? And it's going to rotate them up, clearing space so you don't repetitively pinch that damn rotator cuff or your bicep, which is why what's the most common upper body complaint with lifters that I see in my office? It's not the tennis elbow. It's a hell of a lot of bicep tendonitis. So again, arms up, elbow up is lower trap, 45 degrees to 60 or so with elbow behind is upper back. Lat is elbow close, elbow down, about 120 degrees of flexion to elbow by your side. You know that. You know how to train your upper back, because then where's my elbow path? Am I trying to do lat? It better be close and low. If I'm trying to do upper back, I want wide and as far behind me. And then lower trap, I still think it's important for a warm up to get some sort of overhead motion, because we don't do a lot of that.
Fair enough. Front delt raises, alternating, even more so, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you would want to go even higher. So my favorite way is you take an Olympic weight plate and you squeeze your glutes. You're standing up so you don't leverage back, and you go all the way up overhead. So you're getting, because the front right chest will go from here to here, right? And then remember we talked about last week, the chest will have the upper fibers of the chest will start to have something called active insufficiency, to where they're so short they can't generate force. So rear delt really takes over. And then the only way you get up tall is you're upwardly rotating your shoulder blades. And if you recall from the pullover conversation, I think it's the upward rotation of the shoulder blade and that teres muscle, which is the limiting factor for overhead position for most people. So it's really important to train that.
Good info. Let's go down the path of chest. Let's kind of segue into chest. And the one thing that I want to say to start this is coming back to what I noted earlier, and that is wrist, elbow, shoulder, all in alignment with the path or the movement of the weight. And people will get this wrong because the elbow will sometimes not be in that correct path with the shoulder and the wrist. And again, that's where you start to ask for problems. So I don't care if it's a machine fly. I don't care if it's a dumbbell press. Barbell press it still works with a barbell press, but it's harder to see because there's not as much of a range of motion. But the elbows, not the elbows, the vagina, the inside of the elbow, they're coming together to me, and that's where, no matter whether it's a dumbbell press on an incline, dumbbell press on a decline, machine, hammer press, whatever it is, machine fly, cable fly, your focus, your attention, your cue should be on those vaginas coming together, not the hands, not the weight, not the handle, but your vaginas. Touch them. You can't touch them, but try to touch them.
Yeah, and you want that to be perpendicular to the ground, right? Because people will do, I don't know, somebody must have said doing palms up with a pec deck changes recruitment, because now I'm seeing everybody do that.
Sure.
I don't know. Somebody send me it, whoever said it, because everybody's doing it now. You want that to be perpendicular to the ground and facing each other. Yeah, I've always used the cue of picture touching your elbows together, because, yeah, you go from here to there. I mean, people doing it, watching and listening, you feel the tension change in your pec.
You can just do that. I've done that with clients.
Exactly.
So let's not even pull the hands apart. Let's keep them together, and we're going to do this exercise. Push them out 100%. As far as you can get them out. And they're like, oh my goodness, this is crazy.
Completely agree.
You'll see those big guys. It's always kind of funny, because every time I go over to a cable fly machine, I have to decrease the weight no matter who was there, pretty much, unless a 9-year-old came up and was using it prior to me. Because I'm not there to move a lot of weight, and I'm not there to touch my hands. I'm there with the focus of that elbow position. And at the top position, I always explain it to people. We'll do it this way. It's a V. You want to look at it more, you could say a U, that's fine. But the whole tree hugging thing, you can take that cue and throw it in the trash. It's just really
I did it my whole, oh my God, trash, complete trash.
And it's been a cue for what? 30
Yep.
years. A long time. I remember hearing that when I was a teen. Oh, you're hugging a tree, you're hugging a fat girl, whatever, you know.
Yep. I was like, so why do my biceps and front delts get full of blood and actually hurt after I'm supposedly training chest? I wonder why.
Exactly.
Because of cues like that.
And I've hugged a lot of fat girls, and my chest never got bigger. So so there is that. But the point is with that V, you are literally, you want to get those, you want to get your, I hate to go back to the hands, but the hands will be way out in front of you. Like, how far can you get those bars in front of you? Because that's going to allow that the vaginas to come that much closer together. Ideally, you know, you want to be thinking, I want to touch them together, but you can't do that. Again, active insufficiency, where, you know, all that, of course, comes into play. But that's the focus, whether it be dumbbell press, dumbbell fly, machine. I think it explains pretty much every chest exercise that I can think of.
Yep. Now, my question to you is, what happens to your elbow angle as you're going from a flat to an incline chest pressing motion? Because I think a lot of people get this wrong.
I don't know if I have dissected them. I want to say it doesn't change much.
Okay.
But I am admittedly a little bit, I'm more on the side, if you took 100 guys and watched them dumbbell press, dumbbell fly, and these visuals are up, they're going to be up. People are going to be like, wow, he stands out. His mechanics stand out a little bit more than everybody else's because he does have more of a flare to the elbows. But they're following, you'll see it from the side. That elbow is following the path of the weight. It's following the wrist. It's following the shoulder. It's all in alignment. But I would rather have the elbows flared for more pec recruitment, with the understanding that I have the flexibility because I'm used to that range of motion. I also don't force deep. I'm not going to force, as an example, if I were to do the incline barbell bench, which is a crime, you'll find that out in another day. I may not be able and may not force that bar to my upper chest. And I'm not a very big guy, but I'm not going to force that bar to touch my chest if it's the second or third exercise, because I've got so much blood in there. That's a forced range of motion for me. So then I'm going to be called out by somebody. Oh, he's stopping short. He's not doing them right. He's not touching his chest. That would be a forced range of motion. Not a good idea. Because my elbows are more flared than the average person. Tuck your elbows. You can touch that bar all day long, and it's not going to be an issue. But if your elbows are flared in the position that I recommend that you work into, good luck getting it all the way down there. So dumbbell flies, even dumbbell presses, some machines. I have an old school flex, high incline, that I actually do like at my gym. But I set those stoppers to the point where my hands are probably, they probably stop 5 inches above my shoulder. I am not going to force the elbows into an unnatural range of motion. I'm not going to do that.
How do I say this?
You're stupid and you're wrong.
No. Because so this is a slightly different conversation. So I know we're talking about elbow. I think I've covered this before, but let's quickly talk about the shoulder and what you need to be paying attention with pressing. So you're completely accurate. So if you watch my shoulder as I'm doing a press, I'm good. And then as I go back, my shoulder, so see how I'm exaggerating, but my shoulder drops down, my elbow shoots up. When that is happening in your chest pressing, so for me, I'm here, now I'm too far, which would be bringing the bar an inch above my chest. I don't have that range of motion, so I'm having to do this. That is taking that hook on the shoulder blade and pinching the bicep tendon. So I'm past the active range of my pec, and now I'm pinching shit and straining my rotator cuff. So yeah, you want to find the elbow path that allows you to get as deep as you can without letting that roll forward and keep everything in a line. So chest, we talked about it in last week's episode. Your rib cage is really going to choose your chest training movements in your bar path and your elbow path. I know that's not sexy because we can't say this is the way everybody needs to do it. Right. I'm sorry. Everybody's unique. That's the whole goal of this podcast, is to give people insights, to be like, hey, try this, try that. But you want to find the elbow position that allows you to go as deep as possible without letting that roll forward. Now, for me, you and I are different structures. So for me, when I'm doing a flat I haven't free weight pressed, unfortunately, in like 4 years because I'm so beat up. I have to only do machines. And like, there's times where I can only do 2 or 3 machines because my torn shoulders are pissed off. But when I used to do flat dumbbell presses, I don't do barbell. My elbows a lot more tucked than the average person because that felt better on my chest. As the incline angle went up, I would actually drop my elbows even further for me because that's what lined up. So then that line of pull is in line with my clavicular chest fibers, right? Which for me, but somebody with a big ass rib cage, they are probably going to be able to go out wider. So again, that's where minutia matters. And again, I understand some people get frustrated with this new age of bodybuilding and lifting of just train hard. You could train hard and you could also train smart. So how about we blend the two, right? Other than just load up a bar and just press till you're blue in the face. How about you do that, but you do it with a little bit more nuanced approach?
And you touched on something I think is important to remind the listener. If you're tuning in to find out black and white answers,
this is not the one.
This is not the place. And I'm not even going to apologize for it. The information made a very, very good point. The whole point of what we want to do is we want to point out that each one of us has this individual capacity to optimize our training. And that's the entire crux of what we're trying to point out. So we're giving you the information to be able to analyze and assess your own feedback. If you're unable to do that, I guess just like buy a program and do the program the best you can and save your time.
Hire Skip or sign up for one of my workout programs on my website. There's your answers.
Well, and here's the thing. If you hire me, at least here you're getting it for free. You hire me, you're paying me a lot of money to tell you essentially the same thing. I'm going to individualize it to your specific, and optimize your training. But it's going to be the same type of thing. I'm going to be asking you the same type of feedback. How does this feel? What is your range of motion? What is it? That sort of thing. So it's all the same thing, just costs you a lot more money that way. But if you want to send it to me, just let me know. My information will be at the end of the podcast. Okay, let's transition then into shoulders. First thing that I'm thinking of is side laterals, because I have shoulders this wide. So the first thing that comes to mind is, again, elbow position. Yep. Doesn't matter if it's cable side lateral. Doesn't matter if it's bent over laterals for the rear. Halfway bent over laterals to hit the rear part of the side delt, kind of that connects into, which is arguably the biggest gap in shoulder development for the average person. What else? Even front laterals. Try keeping your vaginas up on that one. Gonna have some
so that's a question I have for you. I don't really program front raises unless it's a female with breast augmentation, like we've talked about. For guys, I can't remember the last time I programmed front raises, just because it's been a minute since I've seen somebody with lacking front delts.
I have them.
Okay.
But I'll tell you why I have them. I have them because I've spent so many years focused too much on the side delt that it's not like I have huge side delts. But if you contrast the side delt, let's say the rear double bicep, if you were to pick it apart and you know what you're looking for, those rear delts need to be better. Those anterior delts are small. Gosh, the side delts really aren't all that bad. But if you look at a pro bodybuilder doing a rear double bicep, their side delts will look smaller than their rear delt and their front delt. So I will put them in on occasion. But you're overhead pressing though quite a bit, right?
Absolutely. So there's your front delt as well.
There you go. And I specifically do that after chest. I train front delts after chest for that reason. It's good and warm.
I completely agree with that. I do the same.
And part of the reason is I have a slightly torn labrum from when I was a teenager in my right shoulder. So when my front delts are warm is the best time for me to try. Otherwise, it takes me 30 minutes to warm them up when they're already warm for chest. The other thing is on those front delts, I will get a little bit of a clicking. It wants to roll over that little bit of cartilage. Sometimes it'll irritate it. So not a big fan, but I will throw them in on occasion. My point with the elbow position is this. The elbows need to be at least as high as the wrist or the weight. Higher, okay. I kind of think it's a better cue to come at it with, I want the elbows higher, even though they may not be, because that will just kind of force you to think movement from the elbow. Movement from the elbow.
Okay. So So let's stick with side delts and we'll go to front and rear. So because what I do for a living, right? I'm a performance chiropractor. I find that most people would have happier and healthier shoulders if when they're doing their laterals, they're not at 90 degrees out to the side, they're about 20 to 30 degrees forward. This is called scaption plane. This means my upper arm is parallel with my shoulder blade. So that's about 20 to 30 degrees forward. Why that helps is that allows your rotator cuff to better stabilize the shoulder joint, which allows for more output of the side delt. Now, if you do so with my effed up shoulders, that's what I have to do. Thankfully, they're my God's gift, so I only have to train them twice a month, and they still are way too big, right? But you will have a little bit, yes, that backside of the middle delt will be slightly under stimulated, I guess, if you're in that plane. So that's when, yes, doing a behind the back cable will change the length. Yep, could do that.
You could do it on a high incline or a moderate incline facing into the incline, sure.
Yeah, I love that. A chest supported that or like a Y raise, great. Now a Q I find because a lot of people they'll have, if you look at somebody's physique, let's take CrossFit chicks for a perfect example. They have these massive traps as females. So they're going to want to shrug and then raise up. So to prevent the trap from taking over, yes,
love it.
You will feel your trap because it's stabilized. You shouldn't be a primary mover. I think elbows as wide an arc away from me as possible, which will encourage slight shoulder. It would be called depression. Essentially, I don't want you shrugging and then raising. So you could look at somebody's physique again, like we've talked about, like for you, your lats want to take over, but for other people, you look at them and go, oh, every time you do shoulders, you feel it in your traps, right? When you're doing lateral raises or even curls, their traps want to take over.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got some really good cues. You're beating me to the punch on a few of these. I'm like, I'm getting excited.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the reasons that I don't have as much trap involvement when I do side laterals is for exactly the same reason you just said. And I think this is a massive, really, really good cue. The shoulder's high already in a semi-shrugged position, especially for someone who's narrow. It also provides more of a stretch while the dumbbells are hanging in the bottom position versus sloped shoulder. So here's what happens. If you're not remaining in a semi-shrugged or even full shrug position, I like semi-shrug better, then what you get is a fluid motion of the trap starting the movement to kind of help gain momentum, and then the side delts take over to the top, and then I don't want to say they come crashing down, but not a lot of people resist to side lateral as much as they do a lot of other exercise. Okay. So that is an awesome cue. Another awesome cue that you said that is important is the dumbbells going out to the side, and a great cue. And I'm going to I want to give credit, and I can't remember who I want to say it was Doug Frichet.
He's a beast.
But yeah. But he was on the podcast and we either agreed or I got it from him. I can't remember. But the cue should be not to raise the dumbbells, but to try to hit the wall to the left and the wall to the right. It's awesome. They'll come up on their own. You can't help that they're going to come up. Just try to touch them to the wall, each wall on each side of you, with the elbows at least as high as the wrist. I don't know if this is mechanically correct or not, but I like to limp wrist I'm dragging this one out as long as I can so that everybody can take their shots before I explain it. But I like to limp wrist side laterals. I like to let my wrist hang so that the weight is lower, almost kind of in a kettlebell sort of feel, if you will. I just feel it better. I can't explain why. I just do. And I think those two cues are excellent. But I have to come back to something because I don't want the viewers to misunderstand the visual you were given earlier. When you were talking, you were turned to the side, you were talking about that angle of the upper arm being, I want to do this, being slightly forward. Your hand position in that position, or the position of the lower arm, is not in that position while you're doing the side lateral. You are demonstrating the position of the upper arm.
Correct.
So I don't want anybody going into the gym doing this.
They're like, this is Well, I'm
This is what
doing the
Dr. Marv
80s
said,
now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Who
I'm
told
doing
you
the
to do
80s and I
that?
feel nothing.
Dr. Marv and Skip,
Yeah.
man. They told me to do
What
it.
a dumbass.
Yeah, you listen to that crap.
Yeah. So, okay, yeah, so that's great. And then one last thing for laterals, if you're still having shoulder pain, I don't like, yes, biomechanically pouring the pitchers out where you slightly internally rotate will get a little bit more side delt. However, if you have, even though it's a lazy man's diagnosis, shoulder impingement, that's another topic for another day, or shoulder pain issues, that could hurt like hell. So
Right.
your solution, I'm going to turn this side, is here's my hand. Your hand is not parallel to the ground. You slightly open up to create space. But then if you're still standing upright, now my front delt is a little bit higher. So if I still want to get my middle delt, you would lean your torso forward. So now my thumb's up, but you can see. So there's my front delt, right? If I'm here, it's still power. If I lean forward, now you can see my middle delt is the higher muscle. So if you have shoulder pain with lateral raises, you might need to lean your torso forward, open up your arm angle a little bit, and still focus on elbows to the side or scraping the walls, whatever cue you want to use. But I have found that will be a workaround around a lot of people with shoulder pain issues with lateral raises.
Now, for bicep and tricep exercises, not a multi-angle joint, but at the same time.
Oh, real quickly. So honorable mention, front delt, you technically want your arm about 10%, good God, 10 degrees in. And then for rear delt, again, think a lot of people will over retract, especially the pec deck fly.
Yep.
Everybody's turning it into a rhomboid motion. I will, if I have to, I'll put a yoga block between the pad and that so I can push my hands as wide. This is one time I would actually say focus on your hands, even though we said focus on your elbows, where you are pushing your hands as wide as possible, but you're not allowing yourself to overly retract. You keep that shoulder blade wide. You're only be able to go to about here. You're not going to go all the way back. But watch how just smoked your rear delts get.
And I can't disagree with you saying to focus on the hands, but don't lose focus on the elbows because it's the exact same situation as
that Wagina being perpendicular to the ground.
Exactly. Yep. And if you start with them close together, here's why I believe that dumbbell rear delt flies are not as good. I don't think they're even close to a reverse pec deck fly machine. Let me be more specific because it's not a pec deck. A rear machine fly. That is, to me, a superior exercise because, again, most of the large majority of the resistance is coming from the stretch position. You're not getting any of that when you're doing any type of back training. So when people say you are using your rear delts during rows, there's no question. Most back exercises, including even pull-over.
Any shoulder extension, you're getting rear delt.
But you're not typically getting a lot of that resistance from the stretch position and nowhere near as much resistance as you are in that stretch position. So those hands out as far as they can get, try to touch your vaginas when you start each rep, when you're doing rear laterals on a machine fly. And I agree with you that I don't think retraction on this is worth it. There's no sense even retracting. You have bigger guys who are doing literally the 2/3 of the movements, 3/4 of that fly movement because they're working it through the stretch position, knowing the other portion of that is getting hit when they do any type of rowing anyway.
Yep. And then I have found anecdotally, if people have a hard time feeling rear delts, a 45-degree arm angle with getting a ton of shoulder extension does seem to help with them finally feeling the rear delt contract. Now you won't be uber strong there, but if for some reason you're like, I just can't feel my rear delts, and you do the reverse pec deck or whatever words you want to use that we just talked about, you could do that. But
elbow path, you just said that. Elbow path is
but
huge.
It's 45 degrees. Anytime you're getting shoulder extension, your rear delt's firing.
Yep. Good point. Because if your elbows are too high, you've got that seat too low, you're getting into the side delt, rear part of the side delt. You're still working the rear delt, but it's shifting some of that stress off of the rear delt, and then now you're sharing it with the side delt. There's a lot of variety. You could arguably go into the gym and do side laterals from a different angle, whether cable or dumbbell, a different angle every week for a year. Really. Not radically different, but different. So you have all these angles. Take advantage of that because every adjustment in the angle is going to hit that delt complex a little bit different.
Completely
All right,
agree.
let's transition into the triceps and biceps. And the reason that I say that, I don't want to say just touch on it, but it's not a multi-angle joint. So, curls and stuff, yes, it's important. I look at elbow position for curls and well, let's focus on biceps. I focus on the elbow position more from the perspective of trying to basically two things. Trying not to overstress the bicep tendon, number one. And number two, no, I'll keep it with one to optimize it. So as an example, I don't want the elbows too high in a finished position on a curl. Elbow position matters based on a curl. It plays into the amount of stretch that the bicep is going to use. As an example, you could have a preacher curl that's straight out in front of you. The old school Icarian, you're stretching from a full range of motion, but you're not really stretching the bicep until the elbow is down lower beside you. So here's something that I do, and the visual is there for people to see. Because I train in a very, very small, slightly under-equipped gym, I will do preacher curls like this on a Gen 1 hack squat, where I put a pad over the top, use a folding chair, and I use the foot platform as the preacher bench. Yeah. And it works well for a couple reasons. Number one, I don't like a preacher curl that's going to leave my arm in a full stretch, arguably vulnerable position where the pad ends at the elbow in that stretch position. So I get a little bit of resistance where I let my arm or my wrist touch the pad before I come back up. I'm not going to rest it, but I'll touch it. Takes a little bit of stress off there. And it's just, it's more of a stretch position for the bicep because the elbow isn't high out in front of me. So that's how I'm looking more at elbow. I'm not thinking of rotating the elbow in or out, even though that can change a little bit too. I might mess with that on like an alternating cable curl. If you have a pulley system with the pulleys that are close together, like you can do that. But it's very, very subtle in the sense that when you're flexing at the elbow, you're literally flexing at the end. There's not much there. And when we change to triceps, it's essentially the same thing, other than the elbow position playing into how it's going to impact how hard the long head of the tricep gets hit. And that elbow position is based on that angle of the upper arm versus the torso or your rib cage. And as that opens up, of course, you're going to get more long head development. And I don't think there's anybody who couldn't benefit from more long head development of their tricep.
Yeah. So biceps, I'm big on, if you've got cranky elbows, keep your shoulder, elbow, and wrist in a line, which means you might need to do one at a time. Because as we get bigger, as we become immobile, what happens on the preacher curl? You start here, and then as you get bigger, all of a sudden you're doing this weird angle. That is a hell of a lot of torque on an elbow. So learn from my mistakes. Don't trash your elbows. And also, when you're doing skull crushers or French presses, don't force the elbows forward, because I'm pretty damn sure that's responsible for how messed up my elbow is, that at some point I'll get bone chips taken out of. But I want shoulder, wrist, and elbow line. And then you've already touched on it. Yeah, when it comes to biceps, it's not that complicated. But over the course of a training program, if you're advanced enough where this matters, I want at least one movement where your elbow's in front of you, i.e. a shortened position. I want majority of your movements with your elbows by your side, i.e. the mid-range position where you will be strongest and the majority of your growth is going to come from. And then I also want a movement where your elbow's behind you, getting a lengthened position.
Love it.
Yep. Triceps. Yep. Like you said, long head. Most people need more long head. And then lateral head, that's going to be, any pressing, you're going to be doing that. Any press downs are going to be medial head, the inside head. I will say the close V handle press downs, because you're so internally rotated at the shoulder, you're really taking away force output from the long head. So when you're doing press downs, I prefer to have 2 ropes. So you're not in this elbow wide. You could get more straight down, or there's other like longer handle attachments. So no, you're not an asshole if you use 2 ropes at the gym. However, maybe don't do that at rush hour and superset 3 movements. Like we've all seen those people.
Yeah. The rotate bar is great for that. The green rotate handles.
Yes, correct. So there's a lot of options, but this, and also I know we're going on a tangent, but I am not impressed when you do the V bar and you're leaning over it and you're doing the whole stack. You're using your body weight and your chest with your triceps, just barely finishing it to do the move.
But what if you have Atomics on and you have a T. Michael sweatshirt and a stringer? That is
and the boat note. You got the boat note? Yes.
Exactly.
And the fanny pack. Damn.
Those were 1980s or late 80s press downs. You had to lean to the side, which was always funny because I'm OCD when it comes to things being symmetrical.
You're like, how is this stimulating both sides evenly?
Yeah, you clearly are going to have one try, and then their answer is, well, I put my head on the other side for the next one. You got 3 less reps. It's not the same thing. No, you're talking to a guy that brushes his teeth with both hands, vacuums with both hands, counts the reps. Anyway, that's a bit too much, but there used to be truth to that back in the day. Let me touch on this before we finish up this discussion here. Decide whether we're going to smash pass as far as elbow position, which is kind of funny because it's not a smash or pass. We're clearly smashing the hell out of elbow position. But
this is more of a PSA episode.
Exactly. Does elbow position impact, as we talked about all these upper body exercises in elbow position, except for abdominals? Can it play into abdominal training? I don't see how it can. That might be the one exception.
Yeah. Well, if you're doing a kneeling cable crunch, don't do a hip flexor crunch. You want to actually aim your elbow to hit your mid thigh. So you're actually crunching over. So because a lot of people, what do? Their elbows are aiming in front of their knees. That's a hip flexor. You're not remember, your rectus abdominis needs to flex your spine.
Right.
So if you're only moving at the hips, that's a hell of a lot of hip flexor and a lot of isometrics from your abs.
And you could also lead with one elbow at a time. You could alternate.
And then you're doing a little bit of oblique action.
Exactly. We're able to tie in pretty much every upper body exercise then with elbow. I didn't give the abdominal training because I don't know if I've used the elbow cue, but there it is.
It's a world of difference.
Yep. Good deal. So I'm going to ask officially because we have
the most
to ask
anticlimactic one of all time.
Yeah, exactly. Do you smash? Do you pass an elbow position related to pretty much every upper body exercise?
I make part of a living of teaching people that exact statement. So smash.
And I 100% agree, obviously. And that's why this topic is so important to me. I've probably written 3 or 4 articles about this for Elite FTS over the years for that reason. I think it's that important. And it's not only important, but it's important to remind people of those cues because those are things that people can take into the gym and they can focus on. Okay, as an example, I'm going to hook grip for back so that I can, which you should anyway.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
Yeah, and I think it's important because if you're just choking, I call it all handing, for full handing the grip, you're going to have this very, very strong, arguably too much of a grip that is going into your forearm, your brachialis, and everything else. And that's going to make your biceps and your brachialis want to work more. You should be hook gripping. And what that does is it's almost think of it as leaving the wrist kind of limp. It's just a connector. And
it's
then
just a
pulling with the elbow because you can't pull from the hand typically if you're hook gripping. I guess maybe if you're a veteran and you're used to the hook grip, you might be able to pull it off. But most people aren't going to be able to. You're going to be forced then to pull more from the elbow. Think of the elbow and everything above the elbow is simply, I call it a rope. It's just connecting the resistance to the elbow. You're not pulling from the handle. You're not pushing from the handle. You're pulling and pushing from the elbow, and everything above it is just connecting you to the resistance.
Completely agree.
So we smashed them both. Let's transition into intimate time with Dr. Marv and Skip. And I think I'm on the hot seat. I think it's my turn. You're giving me the questions. I'd rather give the questions because I think it's more fun. But take it and run with it.
The sweet music of love, we can no longer.
So this time I did not ask ChatGPT. So I actually came up with these. All right. So the rules are Skip has to answer no matter what. He's not allowed to be long-winded, which we know is very challenging.
Very.
And it cannot be about what we do for a living. So question number 1, what was your favorite date night spot in both Colorado and Florida?
I like that. Oh, Colorado and Florida. God, you're being so specific. Okay.
One each.
Okay. Date night. Florida's easy because anything to do with being out on the boat that's easy. We love to do that. This one's going to be a little odd from Colorado. We're big baseball fans. I think my wife is a baseball fan by proxy, and because they sell beer at the stadium, my accountant let me know how much in concessions I spent that one year when we had season tickets, and I never ate anything or drank anything there. I always took my food in the cooler because I competed twice that year. Anyway, baseball park, easy. Rockies fans, season ticket holders in Colorado. So, I mean, time and time again. And the boat down here.
Nice. Number 2, proudest moment of your life.
I think it's still yet to come without being too specific. And it will be a milestone for me. But proudest moment is really, I know I said it before, and I'm sorry to say it again sounding cliche, but it's kids. If there's anything that I've ever been good at it, I am a pretty good dad.
That's awesome. Let's see if you're a good husband. When's the last time you got your wife flowers?
Shit.
Come on, Skip.
I buy her high-end designer shoes, and I know that doesn't count, but I have to put that in there because it sounds like I'm not a flower jewelry guy. Thankfully, my wife isn't either. She has very nice shoes, and they're because of me.
Last time you got starstruck when meeting someone?
It wasn't meeting a person. This one stands out. This one's easy. It was standing in front of, and I'm not a starstruck guy, standing in front of Brett Favre's locker when I was with my client and friend Jimmy Kennedy in Eden Prairie at the Vikings training camp. And I just stood there, and I was just standing there looking at it, thinking, this guy's just an absolute legend. And Jimmy walked up to me, and he's standing next to me. We don't say anything. We're standing there for 20 seconds. He goes, I did the same thing as soon as the first time I walked.
That's cool. Yeah. Favorite baseball player of all time?
I like that.
Only one.
All time. Only one. Yadier Molina.
Ooh.
Okay. The Molina brothers were just next level. When you have
Tough
three guys,
as nails. Yeah. Good God
and just
almighty.
Behind the plate, just to me, an absolute.
Yep.
Absolute
and
legend.
clutch gets.
Oh man, knowing the game backwards and forwards.
Yeah. What's something you wish you could go back and tell your 21-year-old self?
How much time do we have? Invest.
Same for 40.
Invest more.
Speaking of that, are you in the crypto game?
I am. But I'm opening myself up here. Please don't hit me up, people, with your advice on crypto and everything. I don't trust it. I am of the mind. I feel about it like Warren Buffett feels about it. I don't trust it. I think it's incredibly volatile. My money goes into other things, primarily pharmaceutical companies. Seriously.
Smart. You have the ability to donate $1 million to a charity or nonprofit. Where or who are you giving it to?
Colorado Christian Home.
Nice.
I worked with kids in residential treatment for years, not only in Colorado, but in Michigan, and I worked in Florida years ago too. But it's a soft spot for me. I have a soft spot for kids who have had shitty parents and have been neglected. I think it's absolutely horrible, and it's akin to the system is set up now where, and always has been, where you take the dirty fish out of the dirty tank, rinse it off, and put it back in the same dirty tank. The parents need to be institutionalized, and they need the therapy, and they need the lessons on how to parent. The kid is a product of their environment. I would give that money in a heartbeat.
Yeah, my wife did behavioral our first year here, and she would come home with black eyes from fifth graders beating on her, but it was always the home environment, just
Always.
heartbreaking.
And you meet the parents, and you got to pretend you like them.
Yep.
It's horrible.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. Final question. You find yourself on death row after finally snapping. What's your final meal?
Because I'm a control freak.
Are you going poke bowl, skip loading?
No, but because I'm a control freak, I'd want to go out on my own terms. It'd probably be arsenic meatloaf. I wouldn't want to give that control to anybody else. If I actually had to pick a food, it would be French toast.
Oh, what's the place you always rave about?
I rave about so many.
But there's one I've heard you talk about on BSG.
It just depends on where I am.
Okay.
I've had, we have the Breakers over here that's $250 buffet. It's on Palm Beach. And I mean, the harpist came over and played my wife a song for her birthday. Things like that. There's more money in that room than most counties in the United States. Yep. And it's one of the top 5 in the country. I've been there.
Okay.
Great.
And you're off the hot seat. Well done.
Thank you. Much rather ask them than answer them. That's funny.
So why don't we do this? Because I don't think our follow-up topic, I think that's another great topic. We could pause, but let's bring up one of our questions real quickly, and we'll finish with that. So remember, if we read your question out as well, or your comment, you're going into a separate drawing for Team Skip Protein as well. So every time we read somebody, that's a separate drawing. I will just go straight to the question. This is the second time we've used this individual stuff. It's not biased. It just was a great question. Just know somebody asked a question about what I think about Dorian's training, given what we know today with volume and intensity. I need to research a lot of that because there's been a lot more volume studies coming out within the last 2 years. So I will definitely get back to you on that one. But Meathead Medic pretty much said, after he said a lot of nice things for us, which was great, he also said, have you guys considered doing smash and pass on training programs? I'd be really interested on your thoughts for DC training, aka dog crap from Dante Trudell. I've been running it on and off for the last few years, but having a basic gym makes it a little difficult. I've had to get creative in my exercise selection. Thanks. And that was from the Meathead Medic. I'll let you lead this one.
I tell you, DC training, for those who don't know, I still own, have owned and continue to own intensemuscle.com. It was the place to be in the mid 2000s, pretty much through 2012, 2013. Dante Trudell, dog crap training was there. I mean, that's where DC training was, at Intense Muscle. And I was Skip, the conditioning guy. So we spent a lot of time, DC training backwards and forwards. I used it predominantly from, I want to say 2003 through 2006 or 2007. Made incredible gains in that time. At that time, my own version of it, because I can't do rest pause very consistently without overtraining. So it would be low volume, essentially low, relatively low frequency. And just hit. It's hit. I know he doesn't like that, but it still falls under that classification as high intensity training. And there's just so much benefit to it. The fascia stretching, all of it. The recovery is maximized. It really is great. However, because I was getting older at that time, I was getting into my latter 30s. That type of intensity and those short bursts that are you're trying to progressively overload does tend to perpetuate those aches and pains and arguably injuries. I tore a bicep, doing chins, things like that. Now, was it the cause of, because of DC training? Did DC training cause it? Not necessarily, but it was the intensity plus the constant overload plus the fact that I was at an all-time high of body weight. So I would strongly recommend it to anybody who wants to grow, is able to. They're younger, they can handle that. I can't handle that type of training at my age. I set it aside into my 40s. There are different options. You can train higher reps. I mean, we're talking 20 to 30 reps. It's there. And people think, oh, 20 to 30 reps, that's not going to make me grow. Get into legs and Widowmakers and tell me, because my legs grew more from those Widowmakers. I still will fall back on high rep failure sets of legs in the 15, 20, even 20 plus reps. And I'm telling you, nothing is more psychologically exhausting and arguably psychologically damaging than those high rep sets versus even 6, 7, 8 rep sets that are heavy as hell. Love the system, highly recommend it, but you may have to tweak it a little bit, and you just have to be careful with it.
Did you do like the classic two-way split? So upper and then biceps, forearms, and then lower, or how
No.
did you break it up?
It was actually one thing that I didn't agree with. It was one of the very few things I didn't agree with. I did not want to train biceps prior to back. Part of it was because I have pretty good arms.
Well, my understand. So I thought on two-way you did biceps, forearms, then legs, and then.
Yeah, what I did though was I just took it and I changed the split, but kept the concept and kept the
Oh,
principle.
okay,
The only thing I
okay,
really did was
yeah,
change the
yeah,
split,
okay, yeah. So when I think of DC, to give Dante credit, I think of the traditional two-way split. So upper, lower, 3 days a week. My favorite training system of all time. So at first I found Fortitude in Dr. Scott, ran that. I had done training 6 or 7 days a week, probably 15 fucking reps in reserve, thinking I was hardcore. Blah, blah, blah. Did Fortitude, gut check, hated it at first, then absolutely loved it. Then Dr. Scott said, talking about this Dante guy. That's when I found Intense Muscle, and then I found you. I did DC exclusively for 3 years. Got stupid strong. Widowmakers were the highlight of my week. I did stupid numbers looking back at it. So yeah, like first time I ever did it with my buddy, I think we did 4 plates on the hack for 47 reps for a Widowmaker.
Crazy,
And then
crazy.
we're cramping up the rest of the day. Like I love that. Now I can't psychologically handle that. I completely agree. I tried to do a Widowmaker end of last year. I couldn't do it. Because I'll go 50, 60 reps for a Widowmaker. I always did higher reps from the get-go because I am so beat up. So I always did 14 to 20 total reps versus, what did he want? Like 12 to 16 total reps for a rest pause. So I automatically did higher. I think the loaded stretching, he was way ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm.
I love it when Dante gets to go, yeah, I said this 30 years ago. So super ahead of his time. I love it. DC calves. If anybody tries to be a training partner, the first thing we do is leg day, and the first thing we do is DC calves. I've had 3 people say, I don't want to train with you anymore, and they stop there, which is great because I need to weed them out. So I'll still do DC calves. I'll still do rest pauses, but the Widowmaker days, I just psychologically can't handle it. But I could never get over like 190 pounds, and I'm not a big dude, but doing Fortitude, doing DC, I got as high as just under 250 at the end of last year with at least abs in a mirror. So totally changed my life. Awesome. I highly recommend it, but you need to know how to train hard, and you need to be smart and listen to your body. And it's still to this day, if I had to choose one training system that was my all-time favorite, it's DC.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. One thing it will teach you is it builds psychological strength, if you will. And that's why I think people think, oh, I train hard enough. It's funny in retrospect, because one of the things Dante did was he pointed out this is not for everybody. If you're not advanced, it's not going to benefit you very much. So that made everybody want to do it, because everybody thinks they're so advanced and they want to get so advanced so quickly. And even those people years later would come back and say, I thought I was ready. I wasn't, but it built me into being ready and being able to handle that type of intensity. Look, at 5 years of training, I trained intensely. At 7 years or 9 years, I trained more intensely. At 15 years, I train more. The more time you train and the more time you train hard, the more you can tolerate psychologically, and you are able to step your game up because intense becomes normal to you. So it takes time to build on that intensity and that psychological programming, I guess, for lack of a better word. So you think you're ready for it, but then a couple years into it, you're like, oh man, now it's even more intense than it was.
I think a good rule is you should look back at no matter what it is, working out, intellect, knowledge, whatever, you should laugh at what you thought was your best from 3 years ago.
Right.
Otherwise you're not progressing. Like when I look back at even programs I wrote even 3 years ago, I'm appalled. I'm like, this is dog shit. But at the time I was like, this is the greatest program ever. Right. Like if you can't look at what you're doing 2 or 3 years ago and not laugh at it, thinking, good God, that was pathetic, you're not growing and you're not getting better. Now, I know that's a lot of pressure. I'm a perfectionist. Duality, your biggest strength, your biggest weakness. But yeah, if I don't think what I'm doing now is 100 times better than what I did even a year ago, then what's the freaking point?
I do the same thing with writing. I won't go back and read an article I wrote 5 years ago. God forbid, 10 years ago. No, I look at something and I go, I can't really, like that syntax is horrible. When it's not.
So you're saying in 2 years, if somehow people are still listening to us, we'll tune this in and be like, what in the fuck were we talking about?
They weren't very good at that. They got a little better, but exactly.
Yeah.
All right, on that note, I'm going to take us out, Dr. Marv.
Awesome.
If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. It'll sound a little something like this. And if you didn't like the show, just pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell anyway. We want to hear your questions and your feedback about the show in the comment section. We get good questions, we'll answer them during the next show. A new show drops every Tuesday, so that means roughly 4 shows per month. If your question is chosen to be answered on the show, you'll go into a separate drawing, a new drawing, a different drawing, and we will randomly choose one winner at the end of each month who will receive a 3-pound bag of Team Skip protein from TrueNutrition.com. If you have a topic or a specific exercise you'd like us to discuss as a main topic on the show, please let us know. That also qualifies you. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% on not just Team Skip protein, but every supplement they sell. Not only do I use my Team Skip protein with my clients, but other top prep guys have their clients use my protein because it's that good. Dr. Marv, how can people reach out to you with questions or if they want to hire you?
I'm most active on Instagram on my personal page at dr.marvin.saysdc. My website's educatedmehead.com. My office is in the Houston Bay Area. I do telemedicine for all of Texas. Nutrition coach for all of Texas. I don't work one-on-one with people. Sorry, I'm too busy. But I've got a lot of cool stuff online. And I do consults even if you don't live in Texas. I just can't legally diagnose you if you're a non-Texas resident, but you've got questions about how to get yourselves in better positions to follow elbow path like we talked about. More than happy to help you. And unsolicited, there's 3 different types of Team Skip protein in my counter because that's what I've exclusively used for probably 8 years. Just being honest.
Check is in the mail. If you have too much skin, go to teamskip.com and you'll find all of my contact information, including Team Skip merch. Of course, you can follow me on IG at Intense Muscle as well. Keep in mind, this is important, that this is a team of 3, not 2.
Yes.
Chris is the man behind the scenes who's absolutely killing it with the visuals and graphics. He's also the one to blame for too many Peter Griffin laughs. And he also plays a huge role in the creative process. This project would not work without him. So from all 3 of us, we thank you for the support, for tuning into the show this week. Join us again next week for another episode of Between
2 Dumbbells.
Loading Team Skip. Loading Team Skip.